Okay, so we will begin and people can join in as it is. So this is I would say a kind of an interactive session because this is very commonly practiced. I would say in each and one of our houses, we have specific recipes or specific common things which we use for problems which we come across. So the reason why I even chose this topic is because in my practice, when I am talking with patients, clients, etc., the most common thing, I mean, medicines, of course, are a part of something which my mind directly goes to initially. But then there are a few patients who don't have access to these medicines or they're abroad and therefore do not have availability of these things. So for immediate relief for simple things, they're like, is there something which we can do as a home-based remedy, or is there something which is very simple, which I can immediately start off, which will help me, right? And commonly also, I think in the Indian scenario, when we commonly have like a digestive issue or a respiratory issue, we rarely run to the hospital immediately. The first thing will be, is there something which I can do for myself, which can stop this, and so on, right? So that actually brings me to the disclaimer also of this set of conditions which we're going to do. This is not to be taken in replacement of medical advice. Please be clear on this, in the sense that if you're having severe diarrhea of maybe like 15 to 20 times and you're bleeding, or you have like a 104-degree fever, then these are not options which I would suggest you bank on, because you do require emergency treatment. And if someone is vomiting like I would say 7 to 8 times is still okay. I actually had a child who had not peed in over 24 hours, and that parent had reached out to me saying, is there something which I can do at home? And I said, no, you really need to take that child to put her on IV because she needs immediate, like she was severely dehydrated, right? So the disclaimer here is to say that these things which we are talking about can be used in addition to medical advice for simple problems. But if they are severe and, as I mentioned, the specification of very high grade fever or severe issues of vomiting, diarrhea, etc., I would not suggest to bank on only these things, because if intervention is required, timely intervention is very, very important. Now, most of you, I think, have done the introductory course, and some of you may have also done the advanced course. So in these, we talk about foods as ingredients, where when we talked about like raw rice, we said, oh, this is very heavy on digestion, or when we store it, it becomes lighter on digestion, etc. The reason why I also wanted to talk about what is called the Kritanna Varga, or the recipes which are explained in the classical text, these are very common things which we make. As we will see, we will be discussing that a little later. And it is interesting to see how the properties of that dish which we are talking about and how it can affect us. And I think as practitioners, as dietitians, as homemakers, anybody who's interested in food, this is also very important, because when we're having a pulao, it's not the rice and the peas and this one which is actually having an effect on us. It is the pulao itself, right? So that's where we will talk about how the recipes are made, and based on that, what effect they have on the doshas and what can be expected of them. Okay, so we will start off first with a few common disease conditions which we come across. And as I said, in the basic phase, when they are like a simple, you've had a slight stomach pain, you vomited maybe 2 to 3 times, etc. Those are the times that you can think about even trying these. If it's a severe case, please do not take this in place of medical advice. It could be dangerous and I would not suggest it. Okay, so moving on to the introductory part of, as I mentioned, one of the reasons why I talk about this. See, we already talked about how food is considered to be the greatest medicine. right? So medicines definitely have their place, but for anybody, I think many of you coming from a nutritional background as dietitians, you would know that many clients prefer to change their diet, do anything with their diet to improve their health. The minute it comes to medicines or supplements, etc., then they think twice. So anything which is to do with food, which is available in the kitchen, they are willing to do it. But the minute it goes into, oh, you have to buy a supplement, you have to buy a medication, and you may have to use it, people immediately, start thinking twice about doing that. So that's why, yes, food is the greatest medicine. And let's see how, for these simple common problems which we come across, I would say maybe in a year, quite commonly, especially if you have different age groups in your house, for sure you're going to, or you may not experience all of them, but some of them you may have experienced at some point in your life. How we can approach these as a primary healthcare, as the first step, where, let's say, suddenly at night, you're having a severe stomach pain, or you're having like something which is making you feel uncomfortable, and you're like, let me at least take something which will make me feel good, right? So for that, let's talk about what's possible. And as again, I'm stressing upon this point, you may be wondering why, but this is very, very important. If it is an emergency situation, please do not take this in place of medical advice. So we're going to talk about it in terms of systems. The first system which I'm going to talk about is the digestive system, or the common digestive issues that we come across very, very commonly, and how we can use ingredients which are available. And also, as part of how to use that ingredient, I'll be talking about like ways in which, what quantity, etc., it would be have to be used in the individual. Right? So let's start with the first common issue which comes up in digestive issues, and this is to do with diarrhea. Okay, so diarrhea, okay, let me just put out this question and see if we get an answer for this. So which dosha do you think is majorly involved in this? Which dosha is increased in a person who has diarrhea? Anybody? You can put in the chat box or unmute and answer.
Vata dosha.
Okay, so you're saying Vata dosha is increased in diarrhea. Okay, anybody else? Okay, there's something in the chat box. Pitta. Okay, so there's one person who says Pitta and one who says Vata. I mean, you're right in the sense that all the doshas are involved, in the sense that you have a Pitta dominant type of diarrhea, you have a Vata dominant type of diarrhea, you have a Kapha dominant type of diarrhea. But I'm talking about the most common type of diarrhea. And the major dosha which is involved is the Pitta. So if you remember, when we did the Prakriti concept also, we had talked about how a Pitta dominant Prakriti, or what we call as an Ekaja Prakriti, naturally has a slightly more tendency for loose stool, right? So that's why the main dosha which is involved in diarrhea is Pitta. Now, another thing which I should also mention about the diarrheal phase is that in the initial part, not all of you have done the advanced course, but let me just mention that, see, diarrhea can be caused due to various reasons. It could be due to a virus, it could be due to a bacteria, it could be due to contaminated food, it could be just due to indigestion in a sense, or eating too many laxatives, etc. But the thing which we need to remember is Ayurveda does not really believe in stopping the diarrhea immediately. The reasoning being is the body believes that this is one of the easiest ways in which it can throw it out of the body, and therefore it kind of creates that loose stools and flushes it out of the system. So all of the things which I'm going to talk about are not going to be like a medicine which you pop in and it will stop it immediately. That's not the point of it. But instead, what it will do is to work on the Agni, because as we're going to see, every single disease condition starts off with the Agni not functioning properly, the digestive fire. If you remember, we had discussed this briefly in our course. So when the digestive fire is not functioning properly, then these diseases start off. And definitely in the digestive system, the Agni is main. So the aim of all of these things which we will use is mostly to set the digestive process right, as in improve the Agni, and also in a form stop diarrhea from happening, but not immediately. Okay, so let me also ask you this. Can you think of something which you commonly would use as a form of, okay, someone has diarrhea in the family or you yourself are experiencing it. What would you use to stop that? Any one thing which comes to your mind. Okay. Ginger plus honey. Okay. Interesting. Anything else? Okay, so one of the first things which I think yes, buttermilk, soft rice, sabudana, black tea, buttermilk. Yes, very nice, very nice. Yes. So here we are looking at something which will balance out the pitta, improve the Agni, as in the digestive fire, and it also has that binding capacity that we are looking for. Okay. So primarily, one of the common things which we do use is buttermilk, right? And as if you remember, we had discussed the properties of buttermilk, and anyway, I will say it again. Buttermilk is something, the churned buttermilk, which we have discussed, where you put enough water, you churn the curd with 4 times the amount of water, remove the butter, and then what remains? That churned buttermilk. In, I would say you can even have it, it depends upon the age group, of course, but you can have up to 100 ml to 250 ml 3 times in a day, right? So this buttermilk is something which is excellent for balancing out the pitta, in the sense because it has a sweet post-digestive taste. It is something which stimulates the digestion, and it also has that ruksha guna, or the drying capability, which kind of reduces the outflow of what we call as, the diarrhea or the loose stools which we have, right? So that binding capacity is there. It improves the Agni, and it is excellent for balancing the pitta, because it has not only a kashaya rasa or an astringent taste which balances it, but it also has a sweet post-digestive taste. Okay. So buttermilk is one thing which is commonly used. The second one, which is also a traditional practice, is neem flowers. So in this present season, as a matter of fact, because it's considered to be the new year in certain parts of the southern part of India, many people consume bitter neem leaves or bitter neem flowers, right? Because we consider it to be a kapha high time and so on. But neem flowers are excellent for balancing the pitta, as well as excellent for diarrhea. So how we use this is available quite easily in these shops where you get papads and these friable things, or nowadays it's even available online. If you just look for dried neem flowers, it comes in the dried form. That's why I've put this picture here. It doesn't look very fantastic, but yes, this dried form, we generally collect it like at home, wherever you have a neem flower. In the, I would say, October, November season, if you just keep paper under it, the flowers will fall on that. And then you collect it and keep it inside, and it doesn't spoil or anything. You can try it if you want, and you can just store it and keep it. So this neem flower is fried in ghee, and a very small quantity, just about quarter to half teaspoon, even for an adult, is mixed into plain rice and then consumed, right? So most people, what they do is they fry it. They fry about, I would say, maybe 100 grams or so. 100 grams is a lot, but just maybe 2 tablespoons or so. They fry it in ghee. It'll turn black. And then you just keep it on inside a vessel on the table. So whoever has like a digestive issue, it's also a great treatment for worms. So many times young children have diarrhea because they have intestinal worms. And because of the bitter taste of this, as well as the nature of it, it is very, very good for even removing those kind of diarrheal diseases in young children. So some people, recently I had somebody who was trying this out, and they made like a chutney powder. Chutney powder, I think many of you may know, where you add like different types of dal, or you add some form of souring agent, etc. And you just add it into rice and have it, right? So she actually created a dish which contained the fried one, which she made into powder with other elements of salt, etc. And that the children were consuming for maybe a month or so, which acted as a deworming, of course. And the quantity was very small, so it didn't have a constipative effect. But otherwise, it is excellent also for having that binding capacity and reducing it. So maybe 3 to 4 times in a day, just with that rice, you can have quarter to half teaspoon, which is fried in ghee, and excellent for reducing the diarrheal disease in the individual. Then this is also something which I've commonly used, which is nutmeg, especially in young children. This is very, very effective. I recently had an athlete, as a matter of fact, because they need to eat and basically run, right, or work out. So many of them have issues with digestion where immediately after eating, they may have to go loose stools, or as soon as they get up, they have loose stools because the digestive tract is not at its best. So in actually 2 cases, I had given buttermilk, of course, along with this nutmeg paste. So nutmeg paste, you get it as nutmeg powder, or you can make the paste if you have the full thing on, you just rub it on a stone with a little bit of water, and it'll become like a paste. So this in children, we give it just as one lick. You just like rub it like maybe 4 to 5 times on the surface of the stone, and that quantity which you get, you just lick it to the child, and that itself is super effective, especially after 6 months when they start complementary feeding. Many times children develop digestive issues. One of the most common is loose stools. So in such a case, we give just that small quantity, just that less than a pinch, where you just lick that one dot of nutmeg paste, and that itself is so effective in reducing this. And it is known to be something which helps in diarrheal diseases, and particularly in the presentation of diarrhea, where the person says, I have a lot of cramping, lot of bloating, pain, etc. In those cases, nutmeg is excellent. So when a person has diarrhea, you can use nutmeg, but particularly when it's associated with vata, which we were talking about, where you have bloating, cramping, pain, etc., the nutmeg paste is super effective. For an adult, you can go up to 1 gram to 2 grams. That is, you can have it just like that, or you can put it in buttermilk and have it. And those are great ways in which you can set the gut right. Now, moving on to the next one, this is also very common and very good, which is the pomegranate skin or the pomegranate juice. So pomegranate as such, the full seeds, I would not suggest, because this is something which is basically, it has a lot of fiber, especially the internal part. So the pomegranate juice is the extracted juice. And if I would suggest not raw, instead cook the juice. You may be wondering, there is a dish actually called pomegranate rasam, where you can extract the juice. So let's say that comes to about 1 cup of freshly extracted pomegranate juice. You can add 4 times the amount of water to that, and you boil it nicely for 10 minutes. Like, it has to really boil. In that, you can add dhania powder, jeera powder, pepper powder if you want, and then you put a tadka, and the person just drinks that. The tadka means that some people, they put ghee, mustard, and they just put it on top of any of these dals or rasam, etc. So even in this, you can just put it on top of that. It's a sweet sour drinks, which is very refreshing. And as you know, in diarrhea, giving them some form of rehydration is very, very important. So this is a great option because of its astringent taste. The pomegranate skin is an acquired taste. Some people just like boil it like tea and drink it. Because of the kashaya rasa, it is something excellent for balancing the pitta, and it has the capability of the binding, right? So that's where the pomegranate skin as well as the pomegranate juice in the form of rasam can be given. So this we actually gave to a patient, and most of them like it. He loved it so much. He was having it every day, and that led to constipation. So that's the effect of drying that it can have, or the binding capacity which it can have. So use it in moderation, but a great option for people who have diarrhea. And similarly, bilva, this is also super effective. So vilvam or Eagle marmelos, as it is called, this is a specific fruit which is very commonly given to Lord Shiva. And this fruit is a combination of astringent and bitter. It is one of the best amahara. So ama basically means undigested toxins or undigested food material which is there in the system, and that can itself be a major cause of diarrhea. So in any form of food poisoning, I commonly use this, and I found it to be super effective because this is very, very well known as an what can you say, anti-diarrheal agent, of course, but specifically for poisons, it is a very good antidote. So any form of food poisoning, this in a form of a tea or just to, have it in, it's most commonly available in the form of a tablet, which basically contains only this vilvam. You get it in the form of powder also, and you can just boil it and have it. But yes, the boiling and having it gives you the rehydration aspect of it also, but super effective in reducing it, I would say, in my own personal experience, within like 3 days, right? Or even just 3 times. Unless you have a very severe issue, very, very effective. I've even used this in cases where they have conditions like irritable bowel disease, right? The IBD, as they call it, where they are passing like 7 to 8 times loose stools, they have bleeding, etc. In those also, I've used this Vilvam, and it is very, very effective. So in the poisonous kind of where there's a food poisoning, Vilvam is a great option. But anywhere where you want to stimulate the digestion and also remove the diarrhea, Vilvam can be used. Then another very effective home remedy is also what we call as the mango seed. So most of us may be thinking we don't really eat the seed part of the mango. Probably my sister's one person like this. So she'll first chew on the whole mango and then she'll break open that thing and she'll eat the seed because that's the extent to which she loves the mango. But having said that, there is a traditional recipe in the southern part of India where they'll use the tender small mangoes and they make a pickle out of it. And obviously you don't have the pickle part of it because it's very spicy, very oily, etc. But you can wash it, or if you just have the small mango, you can cut it open, you'll see the seed in that. That with a little bit of Saindava salt is commonly given, or they'll just wash that pickled mango without anything and they'll have it with rice. So that is also a great option because the mango seed is also astringent in taste, perfect for balancing the pitta, and it has that binding capacity which I was talking about, right? That is about the mango seed. The quantity, one small mango is more than enough. You can do that up to 3 times in a day. That itself should reduce that intensity with which it is there in an individual. This was a major interesting find which I had, which is called rice washed water. So this is a traditional, classical reference which is given where anybody who has like severe bleeding, severe diarrhea, etc., they suggest to have rice washed water. So I was wondering why would you have, and this is not cooked rice at all. It is like when you're washing the rice, right? That white part which comes on top, that starchy part which we generally throw away, this is that water. So I happened to be watching a podcast in which they explain that. So that the reason why you remove that is when you cook it, it becomes very gelatinous and sticky. That pichila guna, which we talked about, that sticky, something which has that binding coating effect. So the rice washed water, when you drink like that, is excellent for reducing that. Um, okay, great. So if you get it as mango supari, that's also awesome. But as long as it doesn't have too much of salt, spices, etc. But yeah, if it has a little bit of ginger pepper, that'll actually be good for the digestion. So yes, that's also another way in which it can be had. So coming back to the rice washed water. So here I would suggest obviously you wash the rice which you're having with drinking water, because I do not really, maybe the tap water will further cause the diarrhea. But yeah, the rice washed water, that is just the washed, fresh, dry, the raw rice, you can just wash it. And that water you can collect and keep. And for people who have like severe diarrhea, they can drink this. This is also very simply a little energizing. It is something which is rehydrating, and it will balance out it has that excellent binding capacity, which is what we're looking for. You can also use the cooked rice water. That is the kanji rice water, as we call it. But yeah, this is a classical reference which is given of raw rice, which is just washed. That rice washed water is also excellent for diarrheal conditions. I've also used it in cases where there's severe bleeding and found excellent results because it's effective in both and explained as much in the classical text. Then we have what is called black nightshade. This in Tamil we call this Manathakalika. Most commonly in Hindi they call it Kala Tomato. So fresh, it'll be a deep purple colored fruit, and you see it on the roadsides. It grows like a weed, right? So this is the dried form of that. This is something which balances all the tridoshas and excellent again for worms, especially diarrheal diseases which result due to worm infestations, because it is primarily bitter in taste. So this is also used similar to the neem flowers. So you fry it in ghee and then have it with a little bit of rice. So naturally it comes with a lot of salt, so you don't need to add anything. And yes, this is also super effective. Similar to the next one, which is called turkey berry or sundekkai. So this is also something which you just fry and keep. You just have to fry it enough to, it will become slightly darker brown, or this will turn black, of course. And then you just store it in that. So you take half a teaspoon to 1 teaspoon, mix it in the rice and have it. Huh. Yes. So, yes, probably it is also good for mouth ulcers. So these are the common things which we do use for diarrhea. Yes, turkey berry is the dried form of that is the sundekai, and that is also available. All of these are available online, or if you go to the shops where you get like papad, etc. In that, you can just like open it and it will already be dried, and then you can fry it and keep it. And all three of these, the neem flowers, the black nightshade, as well as the turkey berry, all these three in the dried form are excellent not only for worm infestations and as well as diarrhea. So having it as part of a meal in different forms is very, very useful. Okay, we will move on to the next disease, common disease condition, which is the opposite case scenario, which is constipation, right? So constipation, okay, let me put this out to you again. Which dosha do you think is involved in constipation?
Vata, ma'am.
Okay, so there is a kapha, vata pitta, kapha, vata. So yes, majorly it is the dominance of the vata dosha. And you know that generally vata dosha is very drying. I mean, it's supposed to be responsible for mobility, but here the mobility is not happening. So what we need to give is something which is unctuous, which is slightly vata balancing and has a mild laxative quality. My go-to, and I've seen excellent results in this, except for diabetic patients, of course, which because you cannot give it to them, is raisins or grapes. These are the perfect combination of their vata balancing. They are sweet, they are mildly unctuous or oily in nature. The snigdha guna, which we talked about, which can improve the moisture content, and also they have a mild laxative quality, right? So it's like the perfect combination. Most people are like black raisins versus brown raisins versus golden raisins. I'm like, any color does not matter, but soak and use them. When you soak and use them, it's more effective because I think the moisture content increases in that. So you can generally soak it for maybe 1 to 2 hours in water. Many people give this, like they soak it overnight and have it early morning. But if you want to relieve the constipation, I would suggest you give it at night. So you soak it for maybe 1 to 2 hours in the evening, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, like this. And just before the person sleeps, ask them to have just the soak raisins. They don't need to have the water at all because then they'll probably have to pee a lot more. But the point is, at least the raisins, if they have at night, I've seen excellent results with relieving the constipation. And even for children, many times parents will come and they'll be like, my child is not regular in passing, like they pass at any time during the day and it's becoming very difficult, etc. Just put them on this for about 1.5 months and they regularize it because the body gets used to that, right? So it is a laxative and it is very sweet. So that's why diabetic patients definitely a no-no. Quantity, yes, I was getting to that. In children, obviously, if the age group itself varies, so I would say anywhere between 1 to 2 below 1 year, or even that's too much, and it's very effective. That's why. So I would suggest you just give the water to like a child who is on complementary feeding if they're having constipation. Between that 1 to 2 years, you can give up to 5 raisins. In adults, you can give between 8 to 10 raisins. Can it be had with hot milk? I mean, it can, not that it's viruddha or anything like that, but milk itself is a laxative. So I would not suggest giving two things like that. It could make it difficult for the person to have it. You can give it with ragi malt, but ragi is more constipating. So I would not suggest giving that combination for if a person is facing constipation already. Can we consume? You can consume it, but it's just that because I'm suggesting it at night, I'm saying don't have it because then you may have to visit the toilet more often. Yeah, so raisins as such, you can eat it in any way. It's just that when you soak it in water and have it, because of the moisture content, it's more effective in this. But you can have it like that also. It can be a little hot, probably if you have too much as is, even though it has a cooling inherent property, but soaking it in water makes it better as such. It just makes it easier, I guess, for the person to utilize it. Ayurveda does not say that you cannot have raisins raw, nothing like that. But it's just saying if you soak and have it, it's easier to assimilate in the body. So yes, that actually brings us to the next point, which is warm milk, right? So this is why I would not suggest this combination because warm milk itself is constipative. Not hot, not cold. If you remember when we did in the Viruddha, both extremes of temperature are something which can have a negative impact on the body. So that's why warm milk, it's not like, it's just not cold. It's like a lukewarm kind of thing. This is again excellent for balancing the vata, obviously very oily, unctuous in nature, and it has a mild laxative quality also in it. Some people, they tend to also add a teaspoon of ghee into this, which can also be used. Absolutely no problem. Ripe banana, again, because it is Madhura Rasa, balancing the Vata, it has a laxative property. And we did see that in constipation, using the ripened banana because of the moisture content of the fiber is a great idea. So some people sometimes say, but we also use it as in diarrhea to, basically prevent or bind the stools in a proper form. So I think that's more of the, not the completely ripe one, because that does contain a lot of fiber and it does have a laxative quality because it absorbs all that moisture and it can make the person have a free bowel movement. And all of these have been sweet. So obviously in people who are diabetic, it may not be the best option. So in people who are diabetic and they have constipation, asafoetida is a great option. And this is something which I've used a lot in people who have bloating, distension with constipation. They feel so uncomfortable because they're like, I feel like the gas is stuck and I'm just feeling so uncomfortable, etc. In them, hing is a great option. You cannot use kacha hing. That's very difficult. Instead, you fry it in ghee again and just a pinch is sufficient because asafoetida is extremely tikshna. It is very, very sharp, very quick in action. So just that one pinch is more than sufficient, even in an adult. In an adult, I would say maximum like 2 pinches in half a glass of warm water. You can add a pinch of salt if you want. And that itself is something which can settle that excessive burping, gas, distension, and also make the person pass stools, right? And it is something which also has that unctuous quality and excellent for balancing the Vata dosha. can you clear a myth about hing prepared with Arabic gum? I am not sure about that. I've not heard about this myth, so I would not know. But generally, the truth is that the hing which we are having is or has to be adulterated, because the original hing or the asafoetida is so strong. If you smell, it can actually make you bleed. That's how strong it is. So that's why they add other substances and dilute it to make it very, very less potent, and that's the hing which we get in the market, and that is pretty much okay. But yes, that actually brings up a good point. In a person who has severe bleeding or is having their I would say periods, if you're having a lot of cramps, hing is excellent, but I would not suggest it in excess because it can increase the bleeding. So be a little careful in people who have a bleeding tendency. When can be given? You can give it at any time. So the minute a person has like a stomach ache, it could be morning, evening, night, you can give that half glass of warm water with 2 pinches. There is no specific time. Before or after food, it does not matter. You can give it at any time, but it should be given specifically in a person who needs it. Like there is a traditional practice to also put hing in buttermilk. That is more effective in diarrhea, because the buttermilk is something which has that binding capacity and it can help in removing the pain, the bloating that the person has if you add a pinch of hing in it. So the medium in which you give it also matters. When you give it in water, it is more for constipation. Okay, garlic is also very, very effective. You can give garlic as is. You can fry it in ghee and give it. You can boil it in milk and give it. All of these will help in reducing the sharpness of the garlic. And it also, I guess, makes it a little more easy for people to consume it, because raw garlic can be very pungent and quite difficult. And obviously, it has a smell too. So people find it difficult. But that can be cooked in a little bit of oil or ghee, or I would say even something like milk. It can be boiled in milk, and that milk can be consumed. This is also excellent for constipation. Salt itself is something which is very good. So some people tend to drink salt water, like people who have major issues with constipation. They'll be like, the minute I get up in the morning, I take like warm water and I put salt in it and drink it. So we use it as a form of a diarrheal therapy where we make the person drink like salt water. But too much of it can make you vomit because it can cause gastric irritation. So a small quantity, like I said, with the hing and water, you can add a little bit salt, or just plain warm water with ghee and 1 pinch of salt are great ways in which you can help the person relieve their constipation. But just be a little careful, as I mentioned. The reasoning is salt has that osmosis effect. Water comes wherever there's excess salt. So when the salt is drunk, it kind of pulls in the water and that kind of cleanses out the gut. And that's how the person is able to pass stools, right? But yeah, excessive salt, not the greatest idea. And this is the other side of it. So I told you the dried one helps in diarrhea as well as intestinal worms. So the fresh black nightshade, this is how it looks. It'll be sweet and sour when you are, putting it in your mouth and chewing on it. That is excellent for constipation. So I think that's what you had also mentioned. It's excellent for the gum health. So yes, when you just chew on these, this ones, it because of, again, it is sweet as well as unctuous in nature. It balances all the three doshas, including the vata, and has a mild laxative quality. Okay, so that is about constipation and common home remedies which we can use for that. Now, moving on to vomiting. So the problem with vomiting, and here the major dosha which is involved, so we basically be doing pitta vata, and this is kapha. So you do have certain types of vomiting where you have a pitta dominance, but most commonly the nauseated feeling, that upward movements, come with the dominance of kapha. And there are many, many reasons for vomiting also. It could be looking at something which is, smelling something which is bad, looking at something which is bad, or due to hormonal changes as in pregnancy, etc. So we are just talking about the most simple ways in which a person could have that nausea or vomiting sensation. So these are, I mean, of course, ginger all of those are very good options. But here, what I wanted to mention is, see, when a person is vomiting, when you give something internally, many times if it is due to a gastritis, that will also come out. So I've heard so many cases where we give them a medication or we give something and the person has vomited that also. And obviously the parents or they themselves are like, oh, this is so difficult to do, etc. Even water, like there was one case, she was actually a 65-year-old woman. So for her, she suddenly ate something and she was having severe vomiting. So in her, they were saying, they were obviously telling her, oh, have more coconut water, more, have more this. And she kept vomiting. So the trick to remember is that you need to give small quantities of fluids repeatedly. So even in another child, the same thing happened. So we asked them to give like literally 5 ml, which is like 1 teaspoon of water every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes. Because if you give a larger quantity or anything which will cause more gastric irritation, the same problem is going to happen, right? So the things which I'm talking about are external ways in which we can help with the vomiting. The first is what we call as black jeera. So this is made into a paste and applied on the top of the head. So this, there was one experience which I had. It was surprisingly, that child, actually, that parent called me at midnight. I was fast asleep and I got a shock of my life when this parent called me and they said, my child is severely vomiting. Is there something which we can do? So I asked her, do you have this black jeera? And she said, yes. So I asked them to make a paste, and there's a home remedy which is known to us. So we asked them to apply it on the head, and she said it really helped. Now, Jeera is something which is extremely excellent for balancing out the kapha. It is hot and it is something which you just need to apply externally and it helps the individual. Now, as I mentioned, I do not have much experience to share. There were about 1 to 2 cases where I suggested it. In one, it worked miraculously. In the other one, it didn't help as much. So I think it also varies upon the cause and obviously the presentation of the individual. But yes, this is one external therapy which can be used. The second one is cardamom. Cardamom is also something which balances the kapha very, very well. And just the smell of that is known to help in reducing that nausea and vomiting sensation, right? And it is also something which improves the digestion and metabolism in an individual. So that's where either smelling or some people are willing even to chew this. So it's a little more soothing in nature. Even in a pitta dominant, you can give elaichi because it's a little cooling in nature. So they can just like smell it or put it in their mouth and chew it so that it will not cause more of an irritation and that will reduce that vomiting sensation which they have. And the third one is lemon. Lemon is also something which you can just smell. Lemon water, many times people do give, but be a little careful because sometimes if it's very sour, that can also make them vomit more. But with sugar, salt, etc., you can simulate that ORS or the oral rehydration solution which they make when it's not too sour, that you can give the person to rehydrate them. The skin, you're not going to swallow it. You can just keep it in your mouth and chew on it and then spit out the skin. The skin, I mean, people do eat the skin, but it is hard, definitely. This is just for chewing, for removing that sensation which you have in the mouth. Yes, so lemon also can be used. The last one is again a classical reference, and I've used this in a lot of people who've had vomiting, and I found excellent results, even in the cases of pregnant women who have like excessive that nauseated feeling, vomiting sensation, etc. This puffed rice, it's a specific type of puffed rice which is called Nellupuri in Tamil, or the keel, I think it's called in the Hindi language. Black jeera is Kalaunji. I am not sure about that. It does look similar to that, but I think Kalaunji is slightly different. I really don't know. I'll have to look that up. But yes, if it is the same, then you could use it, but I'm not sure. Yes, so coming, so yeah, see, Kalaunji is onion seeds, so I'm not sure. Yes, coming back to the puffed rice. So there is another one which is just like simply puffed rice. This will have the covering also. So that's why it's called keel or the nellupuri, as I mentioned. And this you take a handful, put like 6 glasses of water and you nicely boil it for like 10-15 minutes. So the whole water will turn kind of whitish because the starch in this comes out in that. It'll be sweet. In that you can add sugar, salt, and you can even put a little bit of elaichi powder, and then you ask the person to sip it. Again, trick to remember, do not give too much of this, sips of it, right? So as the person keeps sipping on that, they get rehydrated, and because it has that glucose element to it and it's mildly sweet and it has that drying effect, it helps in balancing the kapha, and it is also, it's generally given cold. You don't give it hot, you give it cold, and it is excellent. This is a classical reference of a recipe which is given for vomiting people. So it says it's not only something which improves the digestion, it has a drying effect, which is what you want, excellent for kapha. And because it is cooling in nature, even if it is for pitta, it will help in balancing that out. And the taste is very non-specific. So that's why the person does not feel more troubled by drinking it, and it rehydrates them very, very quickly. This, we had a very severe case of vomiting where they had some issue with some food, which they had severe food poisoning, and they had been vomiting almost 10 to 12 to 15 times. So in such a case, we immediately made this, we put it in the freezer to cool it down as quickly as possible and gave spoons of that. And that person felt so much better almost instantly, right? So it's a great way to help a person who is having that severe gastric irritation. Then coming to the next one, which is stomach pain. So stomach pain is also very, very common and for various reasons. So these are simple things, as I mentioned, which can help. If it's due to gas or constipation, you can use the list which we talked about in under constipation itself. If it's due to diarrhea, again, you can utilize those. Can you please again mention the type of puffed rice? It is called Nellupuri in Tamil, or they call it keel. So usually for weddings, that they'll take that and they'll put it in the fire. That it's a slightly different type. You can use the other puffed rice also, but that puffed rice has salt in it. This does not have salt. So this is preferable as compared to that one. Okay. Malar in, yeah, it's also used in Deepavali. They make those laddus actually with it. That's right. So that is the puffed rice which we are talking about. Okay, so for the stomach pain, generally you can take hing, just mix it with warm water and apply it around the navel. Very commonly done for young children as well as older people who are having a severe like gastric pain in the epigastrium or around the navel area. You can also apply ajwain with water because all of these balance the vata dosha and they are excellent relievers of pain with that warm application of water. Internally, you can give a combination of ajwain with sugar. I think many people use this. That is to mix, you basically roast the ajwain a little bit and very small quantity because ajwain is very strong, right? So you take just about half a teaspoon, add sugar to that equal quantity almost. And then most commonly people will fold it in a betel leaf and then give it to the individual to eat it because that will help in reducing the pain and also improving the digestive prowess. Or you can just put like a hot water bag locally. Some people also use castor oil. Castor oil is a medication. That's why I've not considered as a home remedy, but it's also something which commonly people use. They'll take a little bit of castor oil and apply it around the navel. That is also excellent for balancing the vata dosha and reducing pain and therefore can be used, right? So for stomach pain, mostly I've given external applications, one internal thing. Most of the things which you use for constipation will also help with the stomach pain internally because many times the pain happens due to a blocked vata. So to balance that out, you need to kind of remove it. Okay. So yes, that ends the digestive issues. Now let's move on to the respiratory issues. In the respiratory issues, the first thing which we're going to talk about is the common cold because I don't know, in any seasonal change, etc. And now I think people have just become more susceptible, unfortunately, after COVID, where any drop of the hat, people are getting respiratory issues, which is not going away very, very easily. Right. So the first thing which I want to talk about is that the presentation of the common cold itself can be very different in each individual. So there will be one person in which it's like pouring. They're like, oh my God, there's just like water pouring and I'm constantly sneezing, right? So that is a Vata dominant type of cold, right? Then you have those who are like, my nose is completely blocked. I'm just not able to breathe. It's very, very uncomfortable. So the approach is slightly different. That's why I'm explaining this. So in the blocked nose kind of thing, also it's Vata, but the intervention will be slightly different. And then you have the presentation of a dry cough versus a wet cough. And this is again very, very different. I think I had mentioned about this during the course also. So most commonly for any form of like cold cough, etc., we tend to go for the combination of ginger with honey, or we have pepper and honey, etc. It's not that it's bad, but many times it may not help, especially if a person has a dry presentation of cough, which is most commonly due to a Vata Pitta presentation. In that, honey may not resolve the problem. Now, honey definitely is a something which improves the effect of the medication. But as such, if you just give like a teaspoon of honey in a dry cough, it may make the person feel more uncomfortable because it does have a ruksha guna to it. So I'm going to give you examples of how we utilize different forms for these different presentations. The first one is something which is commonly used when that person has that severe running nose, right? So it's an external form where you take a handkerchief. In that, you take a small piece of camphor, put one full elaichi, and you put one full lavang, and you tie it, right? And then you just keep smelling it. And I'm telling you, it is so effective. Within like the evening, let's say you start running nose in the morning, by evening, you will start seeing that running nose kind of comes down, because all of the volatile oils in these are something which kind of dries that out, right? So great remedy for people who have severe running nose presentation, where they just have to smell on this combination of camphor, elaichi, and lavang. And my daughter, as a matter of fact, the minute she gets a cold, she'll be like, make this for me. And then she starts smelling it. It really makes you feel relief very, very quickly. While nutmeg, you can basically make a paste and then apply it externally on the nose, the cheeks, as well as on the forehead. This is excellent for blocked nose. So many people be like, I'm not able to sleep because I'm getting this blocked nose. It's very irritating. It's very difficult. To help you breathe better, you can just apply this warm thing. It will open up and then it will make you feel comfortable. Ajwain also is a great option. Ajwain, there are different ways in which you can use it. Here, people will say, it feels like my whole chest is congested. There's a lot of phlegm, etc. In such a case, they can dry roast the ajwain. That heated ajwain, they tie it in like a cloth, and that heat is applied on the chest as well as the back. So this will help in removing that phlegm and the person can bring it out. Another thing which you can also do is to just put a little bit of ajwain in water and boil it. So the volatile oils in that, and keep this under like the bed, etc., where the person is sleeping. That smell will help the person feel better and sleep better, right? So the ajwain is also a great option as an external therapy. I've not yet gone to the internal one. All of these are external. So the first one is when there's severe running nose. The second one is when there is a blocked nose. And the third one is when the person is saying, I'm having so much congestion. It feels like my whole chest is full of phlegm, right? In such a case, we can definitely use this ajwain. Then, of course, we have ginger. Ginger is definitely a great option in people who have a kapha dominant type of cold. So how is a kapha dominant type of cold? When they cough, or, there's a lot of thick white phlegm which is like coming out, and that congestion which I was talking about, it's very effective. And this was actually a remedy I learned from one of the senior doctors, senior Vaidyas in Ayurveda, where they take the raw ginger juice and apply it under the feet. So let's say a person is having like that cold, the initial phase where they're sneezing, they're having a runny nose, etc. You can just grind the ginger, extract the juice, and apply it under the feet because of that warming nature of it, and it balances the vata as well as the kapha dosha. Immediately, the person, that running nose will stop, and also the advancement of the cold to an extent can be reduced. The only thing is, if it's a pitta dominant type of common cold, how do you identify that? Most commonly, the person will have, inflammation. They'll have this reddish discoloration on the lips and on the nose, and they'll feel like fumes are coming out of them, etc. In such a case, I would not suggest ginger, because even though it can be used to some extent in pitta, it is very hot in nature. So many people may feel like there's more burning sensation, their whole throat is like going up in flames, etc. So in such a case, do not give ginger. Otherwise, both vata and kapha, you can definitely use ginger. There is no problem. Garlic is also a great option. It also balances kapha as well as the vata dosha. So many times we believe a cold presence due to like even an asthma or something, presence due to a lack of proper elimination. And as we saw, garlic is an excellent laxative. So that not only helps in the proper movement of the vata dosha, but it is also something which reduces the cold, dyspnea, and so on. Dyspnea is breathing difficulty, where some people find it very difficult. Honey, I already talked about. It is excellent for balancing the kapha, no doubt about it. So that's why most people who have like a respiratory issue, because they believe it is related to kapha, they do have honey. But as I mentioned, in a vata dominant type where you have excessive dryness of the throat, etc., be a little careful of having raw honey, just like that. If you're having it with a medication or with like ginger, that's a different deal. But even then, for vata, it could be quite dry. Yeah, garlic plus roasted chana can be used. Massage of mustard oil with garlic can also be used. Yes, mustard oil is something which I've commonly heard where people do apply that. So my only concern, I mean, it's a great option for the chest application, etc. But a full body massage is not something which I would suggest, because whatever oil it is, the Abhyanga is a cooling procedure. So if you apply it all over the body, it can increase the cold in an individual. So mustard and sesame you can give, but locally, maybe around the chest and back, etc., and then give a lot of heat like steaming to help with the cold. But all over the body is not suggested during cold as well as fever, because it will increase it. Okay. And the next one, which is very, very commonly used, and I found it very effective, is the milk and ginger combination, or turmeric, ginger, pepper with sugar candy, which we call as the haldi doodh or the golden latte, or whatever commonly it is called. This is a great option for people who have like repeated respiratory issues, especially in children. They'll be like, the immunity is so horrible. There's a change of weather in Antarctica and I'm getting a cold, just to give you an example. Meaning that even a small change anywhere, someone else is, this is what my sister used to joke with me. I was a child who had respiratory issues constantly when I was in school. It was literally constant. My mother had given up. She was like, I don't know what to do, because any change of season, this one. And I would, my sister would say, oh, because you're talking to me on the phone, I'm also getting it. That's how we used to joke about this. But I went on this turmeric milk, and now, touch wood, I don't get colds so often, right? So very, very rarely I get a cold. I do get colds. Colds come and goes to everybody. But the point is that this actually changed my life completely. So yes, excellent for immunity building, and a great way in which you can help the person get over repeated respiratory issues. This again a traditional, I mean, classical reference of a recipe which is used in colds, which is chana soup. Yes, milk as such, raw milk as such, cold milk as such, because it increases kapha, definitely no. But when you process it with turmeric, when you process it with ginger and pepper, it can be used. Even at night, it can be given. There's no problem. So coming back to chana soup, which is again a traditional, classical reference, as I mentioned. So this is a great option, which I learned, and I must tell you, it works like magic. So basically here we use the black chana, yes. So we take the black chana. You obviously have to soak it for about 6 to 8 hours beforehand. And then even if you take a handful of the black chana, it's more than enough. So in that, you put like sufficient amount of water, maybe 6 to 8 glasses of water, and then you have to pressure cook it. While pressure cooking it, you can add basically salt, haldi, this one, what is that called? Clove, garlic, ginger, if you want, and you just pressure cook it for like 10-15 whistles, right? So then when you open it out, you will see that the supernatant fluid of that is this dark brown color soup, which we call as the chana soup. So you can have the chana also, but then you have the chana soup, so refreshing, and especially on the initial phase of when you're feeling so irritable, your head is aching, the nose is like running, you have body pain, you have feverish tendencies, etc. This works like a charm. So yes, here we have a very big family. So the minute anybody gets a cold, chana soup will be the first thing that goes on that, and it really works well. You can put ginger, garlic, clove, turmeric, as I mentioned, and salt. And yes, you don't need to put a tadka, you just have that. Is it necessary to add ghee? Not necessary. The ghee is not going to help with the respiratory issue. So when we're talking about a respiratory issue, that's not required. But in general, if you want that haldi doodh also to help with constipation as an immunity booster, as well as an immunity booster, you can add the ghee also. This is primarily the black chana, not the Kabuli chana, not the white one. This is the black chana, which is more effective. The chana dal also we've tried, but it's not as effective as the black chana. The full covered black chana is the one that works very, very well in these conditions. Okay, repeat the chana soup recipe. So basically, you take a handful, soak it in water for 6 to 8 hours, and then you pressure cook it with like 6 to 8 glasses of water. And in that, the spices you need to add are salt, turmeric, ginger, garlic, just a few pods. You don't need to add too much. It's just for flavor, and clove. So when you cook it nicely for about, I would say 10 to 15 whistles, and then the supernatant fluid which is there, which we call as the chana soup, is what you have. Okay. It's the brown or the dark maroon one. It's the brownish blackish one. I don't know what the dark maroon one is. Another one, which is also a classical reference, is horse gram soup. So this is called kulat in Ayurveda. I think in each part, it's called a different name. That's why I've gone with the English name, which is the horse gram soup. So this is also made in a similar way. That is, you add the water. You don't have to soak it as much because it cooks pretty easily. And you can put the garlic, the ginger, and all of that. Same recipe as the chana soup. This is also very effective. The only thing about the horse gram soup versus the chana soup is this is extremely hot, extremely pitta kara. So in a person who has a pitta dominance, who's bleeding, who has issues with pitta, this would not be my go-to. Chana soup would probably be a better option. But otherwise, horse gram soup is also excellent for any form of cold. Masoor dal, we've not, classically, there's no reference of it and we've not tried. Dals in general you can use, but definitely we can see the difference when using a chana soup as well as a horse gram soup. Yes, you can add asafoetida to both the chana as well as the horse gram soup. Yes, you can add a tadka also if you want. There's no problem. But I'm saying in this case, you can even have it raw like that because you want that dry nature. You want something which is balancing out the vata. And it's very, very nice. You can definitely try it. Pepper is also a great option. Pepper, very little is sufficient. You can just have it with honey. There is a classical reference where they say on the first 3 days when you're having a cold, when you're starting the cold, surprisingly, they say have curd with pepper and a little bit of honey, because that kind of balances out that initial phase. So the initial phase of the cold primarily has a lot of vata, which is where you'll be sneezing, the running nose and all of that. Then it switches to the more yellowish phlegm, which is the pitta phase, and then it goes to the kapha, where you get all that congestion and that block sensation. So in that first phase, when it's vata dominant, they do say use a little bit of curd with pepper and honey to help balance that vata state of the cold. And it can also be used as an immunity builder. That is, pepper, jaggery, and curd again can be used, or pepper with honey and ghee can also be used as an immunity builder for respiratory issues. Very small quantity of pepper, because pepper is very tikshna. So I would not say more than 2 pinches even in an adult, because it's quite strong. If you are a kapha dominant prakriti, then you can go up to maybe quarter teaspoon, but that's pushing it. So be careful. 2 pinches of the pepper is more than enough. Okay, another common condition which I've been coming across is sinusitis, right? So in sinusitis, this is basically the person, has this constant post-nasal drip, is having a lot of pain in all of these regions, etc. So here again, the nutmeg paste works like a charm, where they just make like a paste out of it, and then with warm water, and they apply it on the forehead, the cheeks, as well as the nose. Leave it for 5 to 10 minutes till it dries, and then just wash it off. Or they can even take a steam with that, and it works very, very well in reducing that irritation that a person has with the sinusitis. Okay, so that is just one home remedy which I had with sinusitis, because I've been seeing a lot of cases where people are facing problems due to this. Okay. Now moving on to another common condition of insomnia. So insomnia also, people don't really want to go on medications. So they're like, you give me anything, I don't mind, but I don't want to go on the sedative. I don't want to go to medication. So can you please give me something which will help with sleep? Right? So the first one, maybe we'll start off with these two only because it's already on the slide. The one of the few things which I found super effective is what is called the butterfly blue pea flower tea. So this is very easily available online. There's actually a medicine. It's called Shankapushpi. So this, you boil 100 ml of water, and then you steep anywhere between 1 to 4, depending upon how severe the difficulty in sleeping is, between 1 to 4. You may be wondering why I'm talking about insomnia. Let me tell you that the number of cases of insomnia that I'm working with even right now is unbelievable. So most women, I think they have this issue once they've been working with toddlers, or they keep getting up at night, etc. Their sleep gets absolutely affected. So common complaint is I sleep at 10 o'clock, but then I get up at 1 o'clock and I don't know how to sleep again. Or even if I'm sleeping through the night, I'm feeling disturbed, right? So this is a great option for that. Yes, you can also heat a tawa and massage the forehead and cheeks with that. You can use ajwain also, like instead of the chest, you can roast it, putting in that, and use the heat also on these areas. That is also possible. Aparajita flower. Yes, it is Aparajita flower. Hypothyroidism, there are no simple home remedies for that, so I will not be covering that here. As I mentioned, these are mostly for simple things. See, the things which come out of hypothyroidism, like constipation, or they have like digestive issues, all of those things you can use the home remedies, but hypothyroid as such is a disease. It's a pathological condition where there are many, many effects which come out of that. So that we will do under the, disease conditions. That will not come under home remedies. Home remedies are not sufficient to correct that condition. Does this flower reduce BP and you get dizziness after drinking this? It can. It is something which we do give. It has probably a kind of a sedative anti-anxiety effect on the body. So maybe people who have very, very low BP could be careful, but I've not seen that complication. If you have, then probably you need to watch it and don't have it. So most cases which I've given this, they're like, if we have it during the day, even during the day, we are feeling sleepy. So give it to them in the evening when they're back from work, maybe around, some people are like, I'm not able to sleep at night. You can even give it at 8 p.m. Just 100 ml, boil the water and ask them to steep it. Do not boil the flour in that. That is not at all effective. You need to steep it like how you make tea, right? I know tea is also boiled. That's why some people boil that. But in actually, the tea is supposed to be that you allow it to soak into the hot water. So I would suggest that 2 to 3 flowers. One flower is quite strong itself. For some people who have severe issues, I've given up to 4 flowers, where you just keep it and you steep it for 5 minutes. The whole thing will turn a bright blue. And the person can just sip that, particularly after, as I mentioned, like in the evening, etc. And that really helps them sleep. Alcohol is another one which also helps a person improve sleep. It's the, you get in both. If you have the fresh flowers, nothing like it, but you get the dried form. The dried form is what I generally suggest, because this is for people who don't have access to fresh flowers. They're as effective. If you get the fresh ones, nothing like it. So we do have a person who's tried this for insomnia. Thank you for sharing. So yes, it is very, very effective in calming you down and making you sleep better. Another thing which also works, as I mentioned, is alcohol. No, the white flower is not as effective. The blue one is more effective, especially when it comes to this particular case. So alcohol is something which is called madakari. Madakari means something which has that dulling effect on the body. So that's why many people who are very stressed and they have this habit, etc., they have a little bit of alcohol and then they sleep very, very well, right? So this is a small quantity, not obviously over drinking and then being in a drunken state, etc. Then you start to, your mind itself changes and you start doing different things. In a small quantity, it is something which can help in sleep. Warm milk is also something which is very effective. So insomnia, the major dosha imbalance is vata. So here you want to balance that out. Sometimes it can be pitta also, especially if a person is super stressed. So warm milk helps in balancing both. And there are certain studies which say, oh, it's because milk contains tryptophan, which is excellent for promoting serotonin, and therefore that's how the person like is able to sleep. I mean, it's similar to melatonin and therefore the person is able to sleep, etc. There are other people who say, no, 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 there's not sufficient quantity in that to do it at all. And they say instead it's because of our body's nature, in the sense that from a very young age, we're used to drinking milk and probably going to sleep. So our body finds that comfort and feels that, oh, I'm in a safe place, reduces the anxiety, etc., which is probably, it's helpful. But in Ayurveda, we have again a classical reference which says buffalo milk, Mahisha Dukta, as we call it. The warm form of it is considered to be the best Nidra Janana, something which improves the sleep very, very effectively, right? So the warm buffalo milk, if you don't have access to buffalo milk, you can use cow's milk also, but buffalo milk is considered to be the best. Milk with nutmeg is definitely useful. That was actually the next point which I had, nutmeg powder. So this we use again very commonly in young children who are having issues with sleep. Shatavari is not for everybody. Shatavari can be used to balance the vata, no doubt about it, balance the pitta also. But for some people, it tends to make them put on weight. So be a little careful about using Shatavari just as is. But yeah, it's not a bad thing. The So yes, so nutmeg powder also in a very small quantity, we just lick it to the child who's having issues with sleep, and we've seen great improvement in the quality of sleep. And individuals can mix it in warm milk and have. I actually had a case again where due to lack of sleep, due to his work commitments, etc., you could see the vata imbalance in him. Like literally his skin was completely darkening and he was feeling so tired. He was not able to focus, etc., etc. So we put him on nutmeg powder and his sleep improved phenomenally. he was able to have milk. So if a person cannot have milk, you can give the nutmeg powder itself. Otherwise, in warm milk, boiling it and giving it is also a great option. This is again a classical reference and a great option, and I've seen excellent results in this, which is application of oil under the feet, right? So warmed oil, if you don't have access to medicated oils, it's fine. You can use coconut oil in the hot seasons. You can use sesame oil in the cold seasons. Even mustard oil you can use, but mustard oil is a little more stimulative. So either sesame or coconut you can use. Some people have also used olive oil. We generally suggest something medicated oils like Shirabala or Mahanarayana Tailam, depending upon the situation. So the oil needs to be warm, and this warm oil is applied under the feet, right? There's no specific direction in which you do it or massage as per se. But for 5 to 10 minutes, you just sit down and you apply this oil in from the ankle to the toes. You just ask the person to do that and then wash it off with warm water or completely wipe it off. If a person has a respiratory issue, please be careful. This should not be done. It will increase it. But otherwise, it's a very, very calming procedure, which will make the person feel rested and sleep better. Yes, those are also options which can be utilized. And another thing which is also helpful is cuscus seeds, right? So cuscus seeds is also something, it's a classical reference which is used. Generally, people make a payasa or a kheer, that is basically they boil it in milk because this is very, very sharp in nature. So it is having an anesthetic effect. It is something which is increasing the kapha dosha. So this, they generally fry it a little bit and then they boil it in milk, and that milk is had. You can have the cus seeds also. And this is something which is very, very good for improving sleep. But be a little careful. I mean, in India, it's not a problem because cus seeds are something which we commonly use. But abroad, it does contain opioids in it, and therefore it can be considered illegal. Like I was working with a patient and I was like, oh, why didn't you have cus seeds for a different reason? And they said, are you trying to put me in jail? And I said, what do you mean? And they were like, no, this is not, it's banned because it's considered to be from, it contains natural opioids, right? So be a little careful, but yes, cus seeds are also very effective in making you sleep, and you need a very small quantity of it. Blue pea tea is, I mean, it's not a complete no-no, but some people have said that, it may not be the best idea to continuously use it. I have suggested to a few clients of mine, and they have been pretty comfortable with it. If the choice was between blue pea flower tea and warm milk, I would suggest warm milk. That would be a safer option in the pregnant woman as compared to blue pea flower tea. Okay, so yes, that is about insomnia. Now moving on to another common thing which people come about with, which is urinary tract infections and kidney stone, right? So in this classical recipe again, which is given, is barley soup, super effective, where you literally have to cook the barley with sufficient amount of water. It's like a barley kanji, that's all it is. You can open cook it, you don't have to pressure cook it. You just ask them to boil like a cup full of barley in, I would say almost like 2 to 3 liters of water, and boil it nicely for 15 to 20 minutes till, you can see the whole water kind of turn a little whitish in color, and ask the person to keep drinking on that water. So this barley water is super effective in, it's a very good diuretic agent, excellent for balancing the kapha. And it is also known to have what is called as a lekhana or scraping effect. So for both UTI as well as kidney stone, it is a great option, right? So you just ask the person, instead of water, to keep sipping on barley water itself, so that the body kind of is able to expel that. Another one which is commonly used is the horse gram soup again. If you remember, we talked about this in the respiratory issues, but horse gram is also something which is called as Ashmari Hara. or something which dissolves the stones which a person has. So that's why kulatta, the meaning itself is something which breaks stones. So that can be given, but as I mentioned, it's very hot, so be a little careful. Should we filter off the barley? I mean, you can eat the barley also if you want, but the water is what major content which you're looking for. You can have the barley also, there's no problem. But the major thing which you're looking for is the water content of it and the effect that it has on the body. Horse gram soup also, the watery content, it's not that you can't have the horse gram. You can, but this is also very hot in nature. So in a person who has like severe burning urination, I would not suggest it. I would suggest barley soup instead. This is again a great home remedy and something which I found excellent use of. So this is also a classical reference where the banana stem, the internal part of the banana, you cut it into pieces, put in the mixie and you grind it. It's very fibrous. So this you'll have to strain the juice out. And that juice, just about 50 to 100 ml or so, you give it to the person who has like a severe urinary tract infection or a kidney stone. It is something which is very cooling and very good for kind of removing the urinary stones. So we actually also give this banana stem juice to cleanse the gut. The banana stem has a great laxative as well as a mild diuretic property, and it can basically remove. So generally, young children, when they're putting all kinds of things in their mouth, sometimes a hair ball can form inside their gut. So for that, they give this banana stem because it will just kind of throw it out. So that's where even for like stones or UTI, it can be used. Then coconut water, this is a great option for non-diabetics. For diabetics, I would not suggest it. And people who have high potassium also, I would not suggest it. But coconut water is also a mild diuretic and it is excellent for kind of cooling down the system. So a great option for urinary tract infections. I heard drinking cold raw milk mixed with equal quantity of water helps cure UTI. Not in the Ayurveda perspective. Let me tell you the reasoning behind that. So if you have a bacterial infection of the UTI, I would not suggest giving anything sweet because that kind of gives the field for it to grow more. So that's why you go for, if you see all of these things are astringent, except probably the coconut water, most of them are astringent, they're bitter, etc. Because the concept is that they kind of make the area unsuitable for the growth of the bacteria or this one. Viruses you could give. The concept from which that comes from, it's not that it's a new concept. I have heard about it, just not in the classical text. The concept that that comes from is that milk is very cooling in nature. And when you have it with water, it will help in reducing that burning sensation. And it will also kind of make you pass urine, right? So that's where probably it comes from. But I would be a little careful about if you don't know the origin of the UTI. Yeah. So coconut water is also something which is known to be very, very cleansing in nature and therefore can be used. And the last one, which is generally suggested, is beer. Not for everybody, but it is also a great cleansing and diuretic. So when people have like urinary calculi, we do suggest that they have a beer. Gallbladder stone is mostly related to the liver. So, I mean, anything which kind of stimulates the function of the liver and kind of cleanses it should also help with that. But gallbladder stones, the size of it does matter. Same with the kidney stone also. If it is very big and stuck, I would not suggest any of these. You would have to do a laser, you would have to remove it surgically, because if you damage the ureter, that's more of a problem. You could be severely bleeding, it would cause issues. So the size of the stone does matter. Because it's alcoholic. Yes, beer, it's not that, I mean, see, uric acid, there are two major reasons as to why it can increase. One, I think all of you would know, is because of the high protein content. And the second is if the kidney is not functioning properly. So the more common one is because the kidney is not functioning properly. And beer, if you have it excessively, it does contain glycerine in it, which is where people get like laxative effects and all of that. So if you overdo it, it's obviously going to affect the kidney. Here I'm talking about in a diuretic manner for a small period of time, maybe one in a day is what I'm talking about. Because of the effect that it can have as a diuretic, it can be used in kidney stone. Okay, moving on to anemia. Can CKD patient with UTI have barley soup and banana stem juice in small quantity? Yes, they can. No problem with that. Okay, so coming to anemia, so here again is a problem which is quite long-standing, I guess, because of the diet and all of that. So people prefer, and many times when they have medications for iron, any form that it is in, they get a lot of gastritis, they feel very uncomfortable. Some people have black stools, they get constipation. So people are just like anything which we can do away with the iron supplement, we are happy with, right? So let's talk about common things which we can use for anemia. The first one is the combination of amla juice and pomegranate juice. This is a great combination. So I think not all of you may have seen that session, but there was a study which was done at TDU, and there was a beautiful way in which we saw. So amla is considered to be excellent as a rasayana. So the question which they had was, how is it helping? So we know for iron, you need to have something sour, right? So they tried with ascorbic acid, of course. And the three things which they tried were with plain ascorbic acid, iron with ascorbic acid, iron with amla juice, and plain amla juice. And they found that, yes, ascorbic acid with iron increased the absorption of that. But when you had it with amla juice, it was almost 3 times the quantity of absorption as compared to just ascorbic acid. And plain amla juice, so just having an amla every day can help better absorb the iron from the food which you're having. So I generally tell people who have like pretty low iron content to add amla into their diet, not specifically any form of, of course, increase the curry patta and the green leafy vegetables and all of that, but also to just add an amla for better absorption of the iron in their system. The combination of amla and pomegranate juice, pomegranate is something which is very, very good. So anemia is understood as a combination of rasa and raktakshaya, that is the dhatus, the plasma, as well as the blood in a sense. So we basically give things which will help in improving that. So amla and pomegranate is a great option in that. So here you can put equal quantity of the juice. So it can just be like 10 ml of each one, or you can have amla raw and then you have like pomegranate in the form of fruit. That's also an option. But just this juice combination I've mentioned, you can also have it in the raw fruit form also, not a problem. Another common one is, so the prakriti would matter. I'm just going to take 5 more minutes to complete this, so please bear with me. I know we've completed 6:30, but we did start a few minutes late, so if that's okay, I will continue. So the prakriti of the person definitely matters. So if there's a pitta dominant prakriti and we're going to give like excessive sesame seeds, etc., it's not a great option. So I'll also tell you which combination would work with which kind of a dosha. So amla and pomegranate, because they balance all the three doshas, you can give it in anybody. Yes, you can steam amla or cook amla and give also, because for some people, when you have raw amla, it doesn't suit them. They feel like the respiratory issues go up. So you can give it in a cooked form also. Now coming to dry ginger, sesame and jaggery, this is basically, the sesame is about 1 teaspoon. Jaggery is again 1 teaspoon, to make sure that it kind of, you can make it like a laddu. And the dry ginger powder is just about a pinch or so. So this combination, sesame is very, very high in iron. The dry ginger powder kind of stimulates the digestion and improves the absorption. And the jaggery also contains an iron content in it, and it balances out the heat of both the dry ginger and the sesame. So this is not a great combination for pitta dominant people. For vata and kapha, you can give it. And yes, so they can make like a laddu. They can even add ghee in this to balance out the heat further. And people who have like bleeding tendencies, etc., would not suggest this again, but otherwise can be used in other people. Another option which also works very well is the combination of drumstick plus peanut, which is cooked in ghee. So this is actually a traditional recipe which I've seen a lot in Maharashtra, and it's a great combination. It has the protein content, it has the iron content, which is very, very important, because you may know that in anemia, many times protein deficiency can also create anemia, because it's, after all, hemoglobin is a combination of iron and protein. So there's a great combination of protein and this one, but this is very highly pitta karak again. So that's why cooking it in ghee is very important. But a person who has excessive pitta may not be a regular thing. You can give it once in 15 days, you can give it once in a way, but regularly would not suggest in a pitta dominant prakriti. For a pitta dominant prakriti, in this slide, the amla and pomegranate juice is the better option. Another option which you can use in pitta is amla with raisins soaked overnight and made into a juice. So this also, it will be about 15 to 20 raisins along with the amla, maybe one full amla which is made into juice. And then you just grind it the next day and the person has it on empty stomach. Or sattu, which is roasted in ghee with amla or sugarcane juice. So here again, sattu, I was seeing one discussion which was going on. So sattu powder, see, there is a difference of opinion in this. Sattu is primarily chana powder. That's absolutely right. In North India. So in the southern part of India, we have something called sattu maavu. Sattu maavu is similar to this. It's not sattu as such, but it has a combination of like, it has ragi, it has other types of millets in it. There are also pulses, there are dry fruits. It's a whole combination of many things. And that is primarily given during pregnancy, because it's a very high energy, very, very nice, nourishing thing, which is high in protein, good amount of cereals and all of that. So, but this is the roasted chana dal, basically, which I'm talking about. So that's a great source of course, protein. So that which is fried in ghee, and then along with that, you have amla or sugarcane juice. Drumstick and peanuts. So generally people like cook it. The quantity which a person needs to have, a single person would probably be like half a cup or so. They can't have more than that. For a 2-year-old, what is the amount of amla juice? I would say totally about 10 ml should be more than enough. So 5 ml of each one should be sufficient. 5 ml of amla juice and 5 ml of the pomegranate juice. So yes, so the sattu powder, this along with amla or sugarcane juice is also something which you can use in all the three doshas, because sugarcane and amla are balancing to the pitta, and it's a great source of protein also. Or cooking in an iron vessel. There's also a way of fortifying and improving the iron content in whatever you're having. So it can be something like a vegetable, or of course sour things, be a little careful because it does leach it and it gives that taste to it. But in general, if you're cooking in a cast iron pot, some amount of iron is entering into the food which you are eating, and that does have a positive effect on you. As I mentioned, I am not very specific about the raisins. I've seen all of them work very well, but most people believe that the black raisins are more effective as compared to the brown raisins or the green raisins. So if you think that that's a better option, you can go ahead. And I've seen that primarily the black raisins are sweeter. So kids particularly prefer that as compared to the brown ones, but they don't differentiate that much in Ayurveda. They say raisins as such are good for balancing pitta and can be used for all of these conditions. Okay, so I will stop there. Actually, there's one last disease condition. If you're okay with me just talking about that, I will finish it quite quickly. The last common thing which people also look for is joint pain. right? So in that, these are certain home remedies which I found pretty effective. Drumstick powder and peanut powder mixed and consumed with ghee. I would ask you to cook it, please, because just physically mixing it with ghee versus cooking it in ghee makes a huge difference. Because in that traditional recipe, they also add a little bit of jaggery. They'll add a few spices. So that is also something which makes it more assimilative to the individual as compared to just making like a peanut chutney with drumstick powder. That would have a completely different effect on the individual. So I would suggest cooking it. Yes, so joint pain, if the person does not have any form of open wound, ginger paste is a great option. Where I had a patient actually who had a kind of a traumatic injury and they were in a lot of pain, but luckily no bleeding. So in them, I had suggested that they put this ginger paste because it is something which is very, very drying. Anywhere where there is swelling, it is advisable because it's excellent for balancing the kapha as well as the vata dosha. We just ask them to apply it outside and leave it for about, I would say, till it dries, which can be 15 to 20 minutes, and then just ask them to wash it off with warm water. This is again a classical reference of a specific combination of seeds, which we generally give for improving joint health. This is equal quantity of garden cress seeds, fenugreek seeds or methi, jeera seeds, as well as sesame seeds. So you can roast it, take equal quantity of all of these, roast it, dry roast it, and just blend it to make it like a powder and put it in I would say a bottle. And then if the person does not have diabetes, they can even make laddus of half teaspoon of this with ghee and jaggery and eat twice in a day. If they have diabetes, they can just have it with the ghee only. Some people prefer to soak it and have it. That's also an option. Both are not bad and both are effective. In the dry form, it's a little more, I would say, bitter and not so easy to consume. But in the soap form, it's a little easier to consume. But both are as effective. Equal quantity of all these four, either dry roast it, make it a powder and keep it, or soak it, half teaspoon, soak it in water and then consume it. Wheat is also very effective where you can just like cook the wheat and make it into like a paste and apply it on the joint. So especially when people are healing, this is a great option for that binding, strengthening effect which you would like. And the last one is clove water. Clove water, where you take like about 5 to 10 cloves and put it in like a liter of water and boil it nicely. And then that water, you just ask them to pour it on their joints, which are paining. Of course, if they're going to do it like full body, be a little careful because it will burn if it goes in the sensitive areas of the body. But as such, knee joint, ankle joint, elbow joint, etc., they can safely use, they can just pour that warm water, and that also very effective in pain. Can we take it with water? You can take it with water, no problem. The thing is, most of them are very hot. So to balance that out is why we suggest the ghee as well as the jaggery. Milk also you can have, but it will not taste very good. We generally suggest it better as a laddu as compared to that, but you can. Patient with knee replacement still has pain in knee. Everything fine. So in that case, you can try these, or you can see it could be also because of a stiffness, because the mobility and the physiotherapy may not have been enough. So they can initially try like ginger paste, but then if it's a stiffness issue, they will need oil application more than anything else. So the seeds are more for bone health, not specifically knee replacement or improving that. Myasthenia, that's more muscular pain. I would not suggest, I mean, clove water maybe, but yeah, the seeds, etc., are not really going to help with that. For muscular pain, generally, we may have to use more of oils and just maybe a warm water bath to help with that. Ma'am, my mom is both diabetic and anemic. Uh, Yes, does everyday amla lower the sugar levels? Yes, we did discuss that during the course that amla, along with haldi particularly, is something which we have found to be effective in reducing the blood sugar levels. So we can use that, yes. And amla, also adding it in the diet will help in improving iron uptake. So that's a great option. What is garden cress seeds? Yes, it's halim seeds, which or aliv seeds in Marathi. It can be used in swelling in the feet. If the swelling in the feet is due to joint related issues, it will help. If it is due to cardiac issues, it will not help. Can we soak a cloth in clove water? Yes, you can do that too. Can you again mention use of coal? No, it's an external therapy. It's not for internal consumption. The clove water, you boil water with the cloves, and that warm water, which is potentiated with the clove, essence of the clove, you basically pour it on the joint which is paining, because clove has an effect of reducing pain. So that's why you pour the medicated water kind of on that local place. Garden cress seeds, they are used as an aphrodisiac, very good aphrodisiac as a matter of fact, and we commonly do use it for bone health. Anemia, it could help, but I think sesame is a better option. If it was between garden and that, I would say it's more of an energy giver, good source of calcium, while sesame is very, very good for iron. Okay, so I will stop there. And thank you all for joining. We did go a little over time, and I just realized I'm in darkness, but I hope that was useful. And we will see if there are that I'm not sure. Maybe we will definitely discuss about that and see if we will share the the recording for some time maybe. And yeah, maybe we will have a follow-up session if there are more conditions which we decide to discuss about, and further recipes which are given in the classical texts. Okay, so good evening and have a fantastic weekend. Any questions? Yeah, Anuradha, go ahead.
No question. It was a wonderful session. Thank you so much.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No problem. Thank you. And I will see you all in the following session. Have a good evening.